This episode is powered by denmeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to denmeditation.com. So what happens, and I'm sure you get this a lot from people and from clients, it's that if you know, like you have the knowing, you hear it, you know what you're supposed to do, but for some reason, you just can't do it. Like you have some blocks that are just either preventing you from making it into a habit or preventing you from getting it going. Like, what do you feel like because I agree, when you can start listening to those whispers or the knowingness, the hard thing about the knowing one, I think, is sometimes you know stuff you're not supposed to know. And then it's like, I remember this happened to me when I was younger a bunch, like just knowing things. And I'm like, I can't tell that person that, because if I'm wrong, that is a big deal. And if I'm wrong, I am setting off a wildfire of shit. And so and there's no reason for me to think I'm right, except I just know. What advice or what do you tell people when it's like, there's clearly like some block that prevents them from kind of stepping into their higher version of themselves?
Well, the only block there is our trust within those senses. And so we're not taught to trust these senses. And what we're taught to in this world is this chronic use of our 5 physical senses, right? And that is the constant dopamine surge, right? And it could be sugar, it could be negative mind, negative emotions, negative relationships. We constantly are putting ourselves through these decisions to hurt, so that way we can wake up from it and re-see it into the lightness or the higher version of these experiences. Now, what's really important to discern in this process, especially at the beginning, is, well, first thing first is building your trust with it. Because, at first I didn't trust this either, right? So there was this like, is this for real? Is this, are these senses real? Can we all be psychics? And, the answer is yes, we all are psychics. We all have these abilities as a birthright to be. But just like when we're sending a mail, right? So let's say that you go into a US postal, you put an address and you trust that it will get there, right? It's like you submit it and then you trust that it will get there when you send it. Now, the same way it works with our thoughts, with our words, with our actions, with all of these ideas, we have to submit them, right, into the universe or the field of the quantum realms of existence. And then we got to demand them. So kind of like an enter. When we hit an enter or say amen, right, it's like it serves as an enter into the submission. And then we just gotta let the things unfold and take the right steps, to get there. Now, this does not work without you really realigning with what you want. Because a lot of people, they think that, oh, I'll just let it on the universe to happen and unfold. Well, when we let things happen and unfold, awesome surrender experience, but not really, because you're giving the control out to the external versus, keeping the control inward. So that way you make the choices and consequences in your own hands. Now, for this, I practice something called the process of unhooking. And what I mean by this is, if we don't unhook from the external world, if we don't spend time just with ourselves, so you can actually think, what do you want to think into being, you are going to continuously be living somebody else's life, somebody else's agenda, whatever you work, whatever your families, whatever your loved ones are saying. So what I do is once a day, first hour or 2 in the day, I completely spend with myself. I don't look at the cell phone. I go into breathwork, meditation. I visualize the day, and I just check in with myself with series of questions, because then I unhook from the world and I begin the day in my own terms. The second part is once a week, I take full day off where I detox physically, digitally. I mean, I retract completely inward, especially the first half of the day. Before then, I spend time with kids and families and loved ones. And again, it's to revisit the past week, see what was working, what wasn't working, what do you want to realign? Because we're kind of like the alchemists and druids, right, of our own life. Once a month, I take 4 days completely off. And again, fully off the digital world. Sometimes it's fully, detoxing and fasting as well. And first half of it spend with myself. Second half of it invite, family and friends. Once a year, I spend 10 days in darkness, which has become now, I'm going for the fifth time in March.
Wow.
And essentially, it's 10 days with no physical food, no light. And the first time I went was about 7 years ago. I changed my life 360. I completely, for the first time, touched myself for who I am, not for who I am not. And for the first time, I could hear, feel, see, where I actually want to go and who I want to be and experience. The second and third and fourth time I went, it was just minor adjustments. So when you get on this cycle, you essentially start taking charge of every decision and thought and action that you're making, and you can start having a real life, assessment. Is this working? Is it not? And the best way to discern if your life is working for you, look outside of you. What are your relationships like? What is your monkey brain telling you? What are your emotions? What is your abundance, your health? I mean, it goes literally, it's a direct feedback that we're receiving. And any of these things that might be anyhow not working for the greatest good of yours, it's time to look in. It's time to bring it up to the surface and work with it. And that's the beauty about this life, right? We have this constant opportunity to do this, but we don't think we are that powerful. We forgot that we can have literally an effect on every situation, every experience. And when we do this, when we take this charge, life shifts. And that's what happened for me.